PPFM's Storytime, a proper prepper FM production. Our selective short and long stories are here to enlighten your evenings or darken your mood. We do our best to fulfil both for you. So crack that tin or pour that brew. There's nothing left for you to do. Listen in and crack a smile and stay with us for a short while.
Right. Before we dive in, let me set the scene properly. This story is called The Last Greenhouse. It's set in a Britain that didn't explode, didn't get wiped out overnight. It just quietly failed. The bees died. The soil went sour. The world didn't end. It just stopped feeding people. And while most of what was left got locked behind corporate walls on the coast, one place remained inland, hidden, guarded, still green. Inside it works Mara Holt, a horticulturist, a seed keeper, and effectively the last gardener standing between the future and total collapse. Her job is simple on paper: protect the seeds, preserve the future, don't open the door. The problem is, people start knocking. This isn't a story about heroes with guns or last stands in the rubble. It's about rationing, ethics, and what happens when survival stops being theoretical and turns up hungry at your fence. If you've ever wondered where your line would be, what you'd protect, what you'd share, and what you'd risk when rules collide with reality, then this one's for you. Kettle on, this is The Last Greenhouse.
The year the last bee died, they put a fence around my greenhouse. Not a quaint little picket thing either. Razor wire, motion sensors, cameras that followed you like suspicious eyes. The kind of setup you build when you're no longer sure which is more dangerous, the starving masses outside or the executives supposedly on your side. They called it the Holt facility on all the paperwork, which made it sound grander and more official than it was. To me, it was just the dome. 10,000 square metres of curved glass and smart polymer, half buried in a Northumberland hillside. From the outside, in the right kind of dust storm, it looked like a ghost of something that used to matter, like a football stadium that had lost its fans. Inside, it was everything that still did. Row upon row of green, real green. Not the washed-out grey-brown that the world had settled on, under soft, filtered light. Drip lines, nutrient mist, soil beds I monitored like an anxious parent, and seeds, millions of them. Little sleeping futures stored in cooled vaults under the main growing floor. Wheat, maize, beans, wildflowers. Old varieties saved at the last minute from collapsing ecosystems and compromised gene banks. I'd spent the last 12 years of my life guarding them. My name is Mara Holt, and on paper, I'm Lead Horticultural Officer, North Atlantic Seed Redundancy Unit. In reality, I am a glorified gardener in a locked room at the end of the world. On the morning it all started to fall apart, again, I was doing the same thing I'd done every morning since the oceans died and the soil turned sour. I was walking the aisles, boots on recycled rubber paths, sensor tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. The air in the dome is always damp, always warm. It smells of earth and chlorophyll and the faint chemical tang of the nutrient mix. The air outside smells of dust. Dust and hot metal and the occasional distant burn of something you don't want to describe too closely. "Good morning, ladies," I said, patting the curve of a tomato vine as I passed. It was stupid, talking to plants. Unprofessional, unscientific. It also kept me sane. The readouts were decent, light levels holding, CO2 scrubbers at 87% efficiency. Irrigation tanks topped up. No obvious diseases popping up in the test plots. On aisle 4, I stopped beside the maize trial and crouched, pushing a stray curl of hair out of my eyes with the back of my wrist. The leaves whispered against each other as the climate system pushed a lazy breeze through the dome. "You're sulking," I murmured. The plants nearest the aisle were shorter, paler. They'd germinated late, a sign that something in that particular soil recipe wasn't quite right. I made a note on the tablet and set an alarm to check the root samples later. Soil, light, water, ratios, timelines, controllable variables. I stood and stretched, feeling the familiar click in my lower back. 46 isn't old, not really, but years of lifting trays and crouching and sleeping badly under generator hum have a way of adding up. From somewhere above the curve of the dome, a dull thump sounded. I looked up. A haze of dust skated across the outside of the glass, driven by the constant wind. It scratched faint patterns before dispersing. Beyond that, the sky was its usual washed-out white, sun hidden behind the permanent veil the geoengineering people had once promised would stabilize things. Stabilize. That was the word they always used, right up until the harvests failed and the migration caravans started moving north. Turn your attention to the future, they said. That's what I was doing down here. Turning my attention to the future, one seed tray at a time. Another thump, closer. Not wind, not the usual debris either. I straightened, frowned, and set my mug down on the path. Computer, I said, run exterior integrity check, east quadrant. A soft chime. The central system's voice, calm, genderless, designed not to irritate, replied, exterior integrity, east quadrant, no structural breaches detected, audio anomalies detected on outer surface, source, contact. Contact with what? Unidentified. I wipe my palms on my trousers, pull the east outer cameras on my tablet. The feed flickered into life. Dust, always dust. It coated the camera housings, made everything a little cloudy, but behind the smear, shapes moved. At first my brain tried to make them into tumbling debris, bits of metal, plastic, whatever the wind had picked up on its endless wanderings. Then one of the shapes stood and put a hand on the glass. A hand, human, slim, grey with grime, fingers splayed wide. My stomach dropped. Computer, I said quietly, zoom and enhance camera E12. The feed obeyed. The hand became an arm, then a shoulder, then a face. A woman, maybe in her 30s. Skin cracked and wind-burned, lips dry, eyes blue, I thought, though it was hard to tell. Fixed on the interior of the dome with a look I recognized. Hunger. Not the casual, I skipped breakfast kind, but the hollow animal kind that makes people do things they swore they'd never do. Behind her, more shapes moved. 2, 4, 6. A group, refugees. My heart started to beat faster, the way it had the first time I'd watched emergency news footage of caravans crossing the dead Midlands, with everything they owned piled on trolleys and broken down cars. I hadn't seen any caravans in months. If they'd found me now, out here, it meant things elsewhere had got worse. I picked up my mug, realised my hands were shaking, and put it down again. Computer, any active alerts from perimeter security? I asked. Passive systems indicate motion. Active deterrents remain offline by your order. By my order. Right. A year ago, when the contract with Agridyne Global had changed and they'd offered to upgrade my security with automated turrets and sound cannons, I'd refused. If people are starving enough to walk across half a dead continent, I'd said, standing in front of a panel of executives in expensive, breathable suits, I am not going to be the one who blasts them with a sonic weapon. The exec with the brightest teeth had given me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mara, we absolutely respect your ethical stance, he'd said, but this facility represents a significant investment and a critical piece of our future food supply chain. We can't risk. I'll handle it, I'd interrupted. If anyone finds us, I'll handle it. They'd looked at each other, silently calculating the PR value of letting the solitary scientist keep her conscience, and relented. So here we were, contact, no automated deterrents, just me. And the dome. Computer, I said, bring up full exterior view, 360. The tablet screen sprang into a multi-pane layout, every camera around the dome streaming. Dust, wind, more shapes. They'd approached from the north, where the land used to slope down towards what had once been farmland and was now a cracked, powdery plain. Some had scarves over their mouths. Some had makeshift goggles. All of them had that same look, exhausted, wary, desperate. 12, 14, no, 15 of them. Maybe more straggling. A group that size could be trouble. It could also be a miracle they'd got this far. "Computer, how long since last surface contact?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Last recorded human contact at perimeter fence 372 days ago. 1 year and 1 week. Back then, it had been a scouting team from Agridyne. 4 men in armor plates and mirrored visors who'd wanted to run a security drill. They'd walked the perimeter, checked the seals, peered in at the green from behind their filters like kids at an aquarium. Then they'd left, heading back towards the coastal enclaves where the corporations had set up their gleaming vertical farms. I hadn't seen another living human in person since. Now there were 15 pressed up against my dome. "Mara?" A voice crackled over the intercom by the path. Not the computer. This one was human, with that clipped southern edge that always made me think of London, even though London had been lost under storm surge and toxic algal blooms years ago. "Control here. We're seeing external contact on satellite visual. Please confirm local status." Agridyne Control. The ghost in the ceiling. I sighed and tapped the comms panel. "Control, this is Holt," I said. "We have a group of refugees at the East Quadrant. No immediate structural damage. They're just there, looking in. Please be advised," the voice replied, clean and emotionless. "Under Protocol 9, external groups approaching the Holt facility are to be logged and monitored. No contact or ingress is permitted without authorization from corporate security." "I know what 9 says," I snapped, then caught myself. At present they don't appear armed, no obvious heavy equipment. They look hungry. "Understood. Maintain lockdown. We are dispatching a drone for close assessment. ETA 90 minutes. Do not engage." The line clicked. "Do not engage." I looked back at the tablet. The woman with the blue eyes was still there, palm pressed flat to the glass. Behind her, a child had appeared. A little boy, maybe 6, scrawny as a sapling, hand on her coat. He stared in, eyes wide, at the impossible miracle of rows and rows of food. I swallowed. "Computer," I said quietly. "Mute control channel." "Confirmed. Control channel muted." The dome hummed around me, oblivious. I picked up my mug again. The coffee had gone cold. "Shit," I whispered. Then I went to meet them. The airlock had 3 doors. Outer hatch, decontamination chamber, inner hatch. Each one could kill me in a different way if I was stupid. I suited up in the anteroom, pulling on the filter mask and the hooded outer shell. Slipped my arms into the sleeves that sealed to the gloves, checked the seams. "Computer," I said, voice muffled now. "Confirm airlock status." Airlock in full lockdown. Exterior pressure, low. Exterior particulate density, high. Interior atmosphere, optimal. "Right," I said under my breath. "Let's go make a bad decision." I palmed the control. The inner door whispered open, and I stepped into the chamber. The door closed behind me with a heavy sigh. For a moment, I was enclosed by metal and my own breathing. Then the outer hatch cycled. Dust rushed in first, a ghostly hand reaching. The air outside was colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was just the shock of it after years in the dome's controlled climate. The first thing that hit me was the light. Grey-white, painfully bright even through the filter mask's visor, bouncing off dust dunes and the faint skeletal outlines of the old perimeter fence. The second thing was the silence. Inside the dome, there's always a noise. Fans, pumps, the whisper of leaves. Out here, the world felt abandoned. The group saw me and fell back a step. 15, I counted now, more clearly. 8 adults, 7 children or teenagers, all thin, all carrying some kind of pack or bag, clothes bleached and worn, a couple with makeshift weapons, metal pipes, a sharpened stake. None of them raised those weapons. The woman with the blue eyes took a cautious step forward, keeping one hand on the boy. Her voice when she spoke was rough with disuse. Are you real?" she asked. I almost laughed. "I could ask you the same," I said. The boy tugged her sleeve. "Ma'am," he whispered. "Look, ma'am, it's real inside. Look at the green." He stepped forward, hands on the glass curve of the dome. Behind them, a man with a patch over one eye watched me like a cornered dog, ready to bolt, ready to bite. Another woman, older, with weather-cracked skin and wiry grey hair, stood slightly apart, scanning the horizon the way I'd once scanned weather forecasts. They'd come a long way. You can tell in how people stand. There was a slump in their shoulders that said, "Days of walking, weeks of hunger." "I'm Mara," I said, voice carrying strangely in the thin air. "This is a research facility. You shouldn't be here." The blue-eyed woman gave a hoarse laugh. "We should be anywhere else," she said. "There is nowhere else." "How do you argue with that?" "You have food," the boy blurted. We saw tomatoes. Ma'am says they're tomatoes. I've never—" "Tom," the woman cut in, squeezing his hand. "Hush." "Tom." The kid had a name. That made something twist in my chest. "We need help," she said, looking back at me. "Food, water, somewhere to stop. Just for a while. We'll move on if you want. We won't take more than we need." My training, such as it was, told me to ask questions. Who are you? Where have you come from? Are you sick? Have you been in contact with any corporate enclaves? Any known raider groups? What came out of my mouth was different. "How did you find this place?" I asked. The eye-patch man stepped forward a little. "Old maps," he said, "and rumours. Traders on the coastal line talked about a vault inland, a greenhouse in the hills. We followed pylons north till there were no pylons left. Then we followed the dust." His accent had Midlands in it, under the rasp. "A lot of people went looking?" I asked. He nodded. "Some didn't make it. Storms, patrols. Others turned back, said it was just another corporate lie." "And you?" "We didn't have anywhere to go back to," he said simply. The older grey-haired woman finally spoke. "Look," she said, "we know what this is. A seed bank. A test station. We're not stupid. We know you can't open this place up to every sad face that turns up, or there'll be nothing left. But there's 15 of us, love. 15. Not 15,000. She took a step closer. "We've got skills. I was a soil scientist once upon a time, before the storms. I can work. I can help. The others, we don't take every stray," the eye-patched man said bluntly, cutting across her. "We've been together long enough to know who pulls their weight. If they got this far, they're worth feeding." "Except him," someone at the back muttered, and there was a brief grim chuckle. Even refugees had in-jokes, apparently. My mind was racing. Protocol 9. Do not engage. Maintain lockdown. Wait for corporate security. In 90 minutes, an Agridyne drone would arrive. It would scan these people, log them, and decide whether to call in a patrol. If the patrol came, one of two things would happen. One, they'd drive the refugees away, with sound cannons, with guns if it came to that. They'd do it in the name of protecting strategic assets. Two, they'd decide a wandering group who knew how to find a secret facility was too much of a liability, and there'd be 15 bodies on the dust by sunset. I knew what the odds were. I also knew how much food was in the dome, how many kilos of produce we grew each month, how carefully I'd rationed it, not just for myself, but for seed. Every tomato I ate was one I wasn't saving. Every calorie they consumed would be measurable, trackable, a number on a chart in some boardroom far away. "Mara," the grey-haired woman said, pulling me back. "We don't have long. We're not asking for paradise, just a chance not to die on your doorstep." The boy, Tom, pressed his face to the glass. "Please," he whispered. I don't know if he meant me or the dome. I looked at them. Then I looked back at the seed vault in my mind's eye. Decades of work, generations of potential. The last backup of crops that might still grow in this ruined climate. If anything happened to this place, that was it. Game over. "You need to leave," I said, and felt something in me crack even as I said it. Their faces shifted. Not surprise. They weren't naive enough for that. Just the dull, tired acceptance of people who'd heard no from too many locked doors. The woman with blue eyes nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. We'll move on. If you could spare a little water before we go? For the kids?" "Wait," I said. The word leapt out of my mouth like someone else had thrown it. They froze. I took a breath. "Back off from the glass," I said. "Everyone. 2 meters minimum. Weapons on the ground. Hands visible. If you've got any symptoms, coughing, fever, visible lesions, you tell me now." The older woman squinted. "You letting us in?" "Not in," I said. "There's a service corridor between the outer shell and the main dome. I can open that. It's not connected to the main climate. There's a hatch. You'll be undercover. You'll get water, some food. Then we see." "See what?" the eye patch man asked. "Whether I'm going to ruin the world for you," I said, "or the other way round." The service corridor was a compromise, 6 meters wide, running the full circumference of the dome like a ring road. On one side, the outer shell. On the other, the inner glass wall that held back the controlled climate. I'd used it over the years for maintenance, inspections and quiet walks when I needed to think without the plants listening. Now it was a refugee camp. 15 people sat or lay along the curve, backs to the outer wall, faces turned towards the green beyond the inner glass. The kids had pressed their palms to the inner surface, looking longingly at condensation trails where the dome's humidity kissed the cooler corridor air. I'd cycled the lock 3 times, bringing them in small groups, each time half convinced I was letting catastrophe in with them. The air in the corridor was still technically outside, filtered but not part of the sealed botanical environment. I'd rigged a temporary vent to pull in oxygen-rich air from the dome, diluting the dust. They drank. God, did they drink. I'd rolled out 2 big drums of stored water and watched in a kind of horrified awe as they downed cup after cup, their gaunt throats working. "Slowly," I kept saying. "You'll make yourselves sick if you slam it." The grey-haired soil scientist, whose name turned out to be Iris, took charge of rationing, smacking hands lightly away when someone got greedy. "Small sips," she said. "Your kidneys aren't what they were, love. Pretend you're at a wine tasting. Swirl it. Savour it." The food was trickier. I couldn't exactly roll in a crate of tomatoes and pretend it was nothing. Every bite we ate fresh was one less I could dry or preserve. One less I could turn into seed stock. But you can't hand someone a litre of clean water and then nibble a sandwich in front of them. I raided one of the trial stores, the stuff that would have gone to Agridine for analysis. A crate of small, slightly bitter cucumbers. A box of overripe strawberries that needed eating today anyway. Some test loaves baked from the latest wheat strains. They didn't complain about the bitterness. The boy Tom made a sound somewhere between a sob and a giggle when he bit into a strawberry. "Ma'am," he said, juice running down his chin. "It's like I imagined." She wiped his face with a sleeve, eyes shining. "I told you," she whispered. "They used to taste like this." Her name was Sarah, I'd learned. Once a primary school teacher from Manchester. Now, whatever survival turned you into. The others introduced themselves, one by one, in that awkward formal way people do when they're not sure yet if they're going to live long enough to matter. Eye patch was Callum, former warehouse worker, caravan guard. The girls with the plaited hair were Leah and Amma, both teenagers who'd been kids when the last supermarket closed. The older man with the scars on his hands was Javid, who'd once run a corner shop and now carried a battered rucksack full of meticulously organised scavenged medicines. They talked in bursts between mouthfuls, about the road north, about dust storms that swallowed entire towns, about corporate patrols who'd guarded their vertical cities with more zeal than they'd ever guarded the old communities. Seen them? Callum asked, nodding towards the inner dome. The towers? I've seen pictures, I said. Glass stacks on the coast, hydroponics up to the clouds, security walls that make this place look like a picket fence. They'll be watching you, Iris said. They watch everything with a blade of grass still standing. I thought of Control's clipped voice. We are dispatching a drone. ETA 90 minutes. I checked the timer on my tablet. 72 minutes left. I cleared my throat. Listen, I said. What I'm doing right now, letting you in here, even this far, it's breaking every rule they gave me. When that drone arrives, they'll want to know why there are 15 people inside my perimeter. Tell them we held you at Pointy Stick, Leah said with a crooked smile, holding up her makeshift spear. Tell them you had no choice. I'm serious, Ida said. They could shut this place down, reassign me, replace me with someone who won't open the door next time. I didn't say the other part out loud, or decide this location is compromised and move the seed stock somewhere I can't see it, somewhere I can't protect it. Sarah looked around the ring, then back at me. What you did, she said quietly, saved us, at least for today. I may have just endangered everyone, I countered. You mean us, Callum said. People like us, down here. I shook my head. I mean everyone, I said, plants included. Those seeds in the vault, they're not just Agradyne's property. They're life, for whoever comes after us. If I let short-term emergencies nibble them away, there'll be nothing left to plant when the dust settles. So we're an emergency, Leah said, not unkindly. Fair. Your people, I said. That's the problem. Iris wiped strawberry juice from her fingers and studied me. How long have you been down here, Mara? 12 years, I said. In and out at first. Then, when the storms got worse, mostly in. Alone, she asked. Mostly, I said. She nodded, like a doctor confirming a diagnosis. That's a long time guarding a forest for people you've never met, she said gently. No wonder you're a bit twitchy about us trampling the flower beds. I laughed, unexpectedly. Twitchy, I said. That's one word for it. We sat in a brief, companionable silence, broken only by the sound of chewing and small, involuntary noises of pleasure from the kids. My tablet buzzed. Control. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled up the system screen and opened the external feeds. The drone was already in the air, a little blinking triangle on the map, moving inland from the coast. Faster than 90 minutes. They'd lied. Or underestimated. Either way, I had less than an hour to decide what kind of person I was. A seed keeper, a nursemaid for hypothetical futures, or a human being in a corridor with 15 others, trying to keep them all alive through the afternoon. Mara? Sarah's voice cut in softly. You all right? No, I said, and yes, and no. She smiled a little. Same, she said. I stood, feeling the weight of their eyes on me. Listen, I said. When that drone gets here, it will scan for heat signatures, movement, unauthorized access. It will see you. If I pretend you're not here, Control will know I'm lying. If I admit you're here, they'll send a patrol. And then? Callum asked, though he already knew. Best case, Aunt, I said. They move you to a corporate camp on the coast. You'll be fed, maybe even sheltered. You'll also be monitored, logged and used as bargaining chips in whatever politics they've got going on this week. Worst case? Leah asked. I didn't answer. Silence swallowed the corridor. Tom fidgeted. Why don't we just hide? He asked. I can be very small. It broke my heart a little. Iris cleared her throat. You said there's a vault, she said. Seeds, yeah? How much redundancy have you got? If, say, a tray or two went missing, would anyone notice? I'd notice, I said. Anyone else? Oh, she pushed. Eventually, I said, when the inventory checks failed, when the germination rates didn't match the database. And what would they do? Javed asked. Sack you, sue you, send you to prison? How's that different from your life now, really? I felt anger flare in my chest. My life now is important, I said. This work, is important. Not arguing, Iris said calmly, but you're living under the illusion that the only way to protect those seeds is to keep them in a box under corporate lock and key until some hypothetical better society comes along to use them properly. She leaned forward. What if that society doesn't come, she asked. What if this is it? Dust outside, towers on the coast, the odd hidden greenhouse, and a handful of stubborn idiots dragging caravans through the wasteland. Maybe the choice isn't between perfect future and messy present. Maybe it's between messy present and no future at all. The tablet buzzed again. The drone's icon crawled closer. I can't just throw open the vault, I said. If I let you in there, if I let anyone in, there's no going back. It only takes one idiot with a lighter, one infection, one spill. This dome was designed to be isolated. So were you, Sarah said quietly. That hit harder than I expected. Sorry, she added quickly. I don't mean that as an insult, just observation. They put you here, alone with the seeds. You've been marinating in corporate responsibility and noble sacrifice so long, you can't see that you're part of the ecosystem too. I laughed, a short, pained sound. Great, I said. Now I'm a metaphor. Tom tugged at my trouser leg. You could plant some of them out here, he said, eyes huge. In the dust. Maybe they'd grow. And then we could guard them while you look after the ones in there. Like two gardens. The dust is toxic, I said automatically. The topsoil blew away. What's left is loaded with heavy metals and microplastics and God knows what else. Not everywhere, Iris said thoughtfully. There are pockets, depressions where organic matter collected, old riverbeds, places that had enough cover to keep a little life. We saw green moss once, near a collapsed drainage tunnel. Her eyes went distant. I didn't think I'd ever see green again, she murmured. Not like that. The drone pinged on the map, 30 minutes out. I stood there in the corridor, the hum of the dome behind me, the raw need of the refugees in front of me, and felt the old certainty of my mission fracture. I'd come here to be a guardian of the future. What did that even mean, if I couldn't keep people alive in the present? Mara, Iris said gently, you don't have to decide everything forever today. Just whether we die out there in the dust or die inside doing something that might matter. I took a deep breath. All right, I said. Here's what we're going to do, and it's going to get us all in trouble. We moved fast. First, I unmuted control. This is Holt, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Confirming external group at perimeter. I have them contained in the service corridor. No breach of primary dome. Request instruction. The reply was immediate. Containment confirmed on our monitors. Maintain separation protocols. Drone will arrive shortly to assess threat level and recommend necessary action. Threat level. Necessary action. Understood, I said. Holt out. I muted them again before they could launch into a legalese explanation of liability. Can they see us in here? Leah asked, looking nervously up at the ceiling. Heat signatures, yes, I said. Not faces. Not what we're doing. The inner dome glass is shielded. They can't see through it. The service corridor's only on the basic grid. So they know we're 15 blobs, Callum said. Not that we're eating your tomatoes. Yet, I said, his eye gleamed. That a promise? I ignored him and keyed in a sequence on the wall panel. A hidden hatch at thigh height along the inner wall slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, a narrow tunnel led under the main growing floor. The vault, I said, direct access. This was meant to be for emergency retrieval, if we needed to grab samples and go in a hurry. It's never been used. I hesitated, hand on the frame. If any of you so much as sneeze on a seed tray, I will personally throw you back out into the storm, I said. Amma held up her hands. We know how to be careful, she said. We've been living in places far more fragile than your science pantry. We crawled. It smelled different down there, cooler, drier, less earth, more metal and cold. At the end of the tunnel, another hatch waited. I unlocked it with a keycard I kept in a pouch around my neck, next to my ID, and a tiny packet of heirloom sunflower seeds my grandmother had given me before the coasts went under. The vault bloomed around us. Rows and rows of shelves under low, bright lights, boxes, vials, trays with neat labels. The air temperature was a constant 4 degrees, maintained by backup generators and what was left of the national grid's spine. Tom sucked in a breath. "It's like a library," he whispered, "but for plants." "That's not a bad description," I said. "I walk them between the rows. This," I said, tapping a drawer, "is cereal grains. Old ones, hardy ones, barley, emmer, spelt. This section is legumes, beans, lentils, peas, that used to grow in climates you wouldn't recognize. Over there, wild relatives, things we might need if everything else fails." Iris ran her fingers lightly over the labels, reverent. "You've been busy," she said. "Generations before me were busy," I corrected. "I'm just the annoying librarian who won't let anyone check anything out." "Until now," Javid said quietly. I stopped at a side bay. "This row," I said, "is experimental lines, short cycle, drought tolerant. We've been breeding them for exactly the conditions you lot walk through every day." I pulled out a tray. 10 packets lay in it, each about the size of my palm. Each held maybe 100 seeds. "These were due to be sent to Coastal Stack 4 next month," I said. "Field trials in their controlled vertical farms." "What if they go missing?" Leah asked. I closed my eyes briefly. "If they go missing," I said, "and they grow somewhere no one's watching, then Agridine will still have their own stocks. They'll survive. They always do. The missing data will annoy them. They'll blame me. They might shut this place down, they might not." I met her gaze. "But if they go missing and they die in someone's pocket on the road, that's a waste I can't live with. So if we take them, we plant them. Properly. Somewhere they've got a chance. Deal?" "Deal," she said. I handed a packet to Iris. "Barley," I said, "early maturing, low water, high salt tolerance." Another to Javed. "Amaranth, pseudo-cereal, good protein, doesn't mind poor soils." Another to Sarah. "Cowpeas, fix nitrogen, feed the ground as well as your kids." To Callum I gave beans. "Climbing variety," I said. "Use whatever sticks you can find." To the kids I handed packets of small bright things, cherry tomatoes, chilies, herbs. "Because if you're going to risk your lives gardening in a wasteland," I said, "you deserve flavour." Tom grinned, clutching his. "What's this one?" he asked. "Sunflowers," I said. "The old kind. Big heads. Lots of seeds. Birds love them. Bees used to." "Will they grow?" he asked. I thought of the dust, the poisoned soil. "They might," I said, "if you help them, if you find the right spot, if you share what you learn." He nodded solemnly. "We will," he said. "We'll be like you." "God forbid," I muttered. I took 2 packets for myself. Backup lines, in case the worst happened here and I needed to restart somewhere else. Then I keyed in another sequence at a side console and watched as a tiny slot opened in the wall, like a post box. "What's that?" Amma asked. "Insurance," I said. A slender sealed tube slid out, distributed backup, one of several hidden around the dome. I'd argued for it during design. Decentralization in case of breach. No one else knew exactly where all the caches were. If Control ever decided the Holt facility was compromised beyond saving, at least some of the genetic stock would live on in buried capsules. I tucked the tube into my pouch. "I can't keep it all safe anymore," I said. "But I can carry a little. So can you." Iris touched my arm. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This isn't charity," I said. "It's desperation dressed up as ethics." "Ethics is just desperation with rules," she said. "Don't underestimate it." By the time we crawled back into the service corridor, the drone was overhead. You can hear them, if you know what to listen for. Not like the old quadcopters kids used to play with in parks. These are bigger, deeper, more like a giant wasp circling the edge of your hearing. The kid stiffened. "Easy," I said. "Stay where you are, don't wave, don't throw anything, don't give them an excuse." The lights in the corridor shifted as the drone's cameras pinged our heat signatures. My tablet lit up with a priority channel. Holt facility. This is security drone 19 on approach. We register 16 human signatures inside your perimeter. Confirm status. 16. Computer, I whispered. Disable my biometric feed. Route audio only. Acknowledged. I keyed the communication. This is Holt, I said, deliberately leaving the corridor noise in the background. Let them hear the coughs, the shuffling. I confirm presence of external refugees in the service corridor. They arrived malnourished and dehydrated. I have provided emergency aid. A pause. You were not authorized to do so, the drone operator said. Different voice from control, harder, less patient. I was not authorized to watch children die on my doorstep either, I said. Yet here we are. Another pause. I could imagine the secure room somewhere on the coast, screens glowing, suits leaning over consoles. Stand by for instruction, the voice said. I muted them again and turned to the group. Right, I said. This is where it gets ugly. How ugly? Callum asked. Best case, I said. They order me to move you out beyond the perimeter and let their patrols deal with you. Worst case, they consider you a security risk and tell me to clear you by any means necessary. Discreetly. Leah snorted. They really think you're going to murder us for them? She asked. They think I'll protect the seeds at any cost, I said. The tablet buzzed. I answered. Holt, this is corporate security. A new voice said, older, smug. We appreciate your compassion. However, the Holt facility is not a humanitarian centre. Your standing orders are to preserve the genetic archive at all costs. Do you understand? I understand my orders, I said evenly. I also understand that I cannot unfeed people after I've given them water and food. They're here now. Understood. Security teams are being prepped for dispatch. ETA, 3 hours. In the interim, your directive is to ensure the refugees remain in the service corridor. Do not allow them access to the primary dome or the vault. I glanced at the little bulges of seed packets in their pockets. Too late. Copy, I said. They'll remain contained. Additionally, the voice continued, you will provide us with a full biometric and skill profile for each individual. Names, ages, prior occupations, medical status. This will allow corporate to determine their potential utility in our coastal operations. Callum's jaw clenched. We're not signing up to be tower slaves, he muttered. I held up a hand to silence him. What if they decline relocation? I asked the voice. You know, human rights, consent, all that old-fashioned stuff. The security man actually laughed. Holt, those frameworks were written for a very different world, he said. At present, survival is contingent on order. The corporations provide that. Your refugees can either contribute within our structures or face the consequences of remaining outside them. It's really quite simple. Simple. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Understood, I said. One more question. If they're deemed non-viable for relocation, too sick, too old, what would you like done with them? Silence. Then curtly, that will be up to the security team leader's discretion. Your part is to hold them there. We expect your cooperation, Holt. A reminder, your contract includes a clause on sabotage and dereliction of duty. The penalties are significant. I'm sure they are, I said. Holt out. I killed the line. Everyone was looking at me. So, Leah said slowly, they're coming to collect us. Best case, we get a concrete bunk and a barcode. Worst case, we get a shallow grave. Pretty much, I said. And you? Iris asked. What happens to you if you don't play along? I lose this place, I said. Maybe my freedom. Possibly my life. Depends how paranoid they're feeling. Tom edged closer to me. Why did you let us in? He asked softly. Because I couldn't stand looking at your hand on the glass. Because 12 years of doing the right thing left me with no one to mourn me if I disappeared, except a few rows of beans. Because I was tired. Because I wanted to believe the future I was protecting wasn't just for the people in towers. Because I forgot to lock the door, I said, and he smiled a little, even now. Iris cracked her knuckles. All right, she said. Proposal. We don't stay where the heavily armed men are coming. We leave. Now. With what we can carry. We get as far as we can before they arrive. They'll track you, I said. The drone's got your heat signatures logged. Then we split, Callum said. Small groups, scatter. They can't chase everyone. Leah shook her head. You're forgetting something, she said. Out there, we were barely surviving with what we had. We've got kids. No water, no safe route. She looked at me. And in here, she said, you've got the last decent ecosystem on this side of the ocean. And the last decent hostage, I said. Me. The words came out before I'd fully thought them. An idea was forming, horrible, risky, possibly suicidal. I hated it, which probably meant it was the right one. Computer, I said, what's the status of the emergency override on the primary dome environmental controls? Emergency override is active. Certain parameters may be manually adjusted by authorized personnel in the event of fire, contamination, or structural failure. Authorized personnel meaning me, I said. Correct. I turned to the group. If the security team think this facility is compromised beyond use, I said slowly, they won't waste resources trying to hold it. They'll either try to secure what they can and leave, or they'll write it off and move on to their towers. You're suggesting we break it? Iris asked. Not the seed, I said quickly. Not the vault, but the dome. The nice or stable bubble. If I vent some of the humidity, twist the temperature, make it look like we've had a catastrophic systems failure just as they arrive. They'll assume the environment's screwed, Iris finished. The plants will look droopy maybe. Sensors will panic. Risk of pathogens. They'll cut their losses. Possibly, I said. Or they'll blame me and send in a technician. Leah raised an eyebrow. And in all this, where are we? She asked. I took a deep breath. If the dome looks compromised, I said, corporate might decide the only bits worth saving are the easy-to-move ones. The seed capsules, the data. They may try to extract those and leave the rest. That gives us a window to disappear with some of our own seed stock and without them deciding your assets to be taken or problems to be eliminated. A controlled crash, Iris said. Fake a small apocalypse inside the big one so the vultures fly on. Callum grinned. Now, you're talking my language, he said. Sarah chewed her lip. If you mess this up, those plants could die, she said, and all this would be for nothing. I met her gaze. If we don't do anything, I said, you die, and a bunch of men with guns decide what gets planted where and who gets to eat it. I looked at Tom. At some point, someone has to risk something for you lot. Might as well be me. He frowned. We can help, he said, with that fierce earnestness only kids have left. You can, I said, by listening, by moving when I tell you, by not touching any buttons unless I tell you which ones save our lives. He nodded. Callum clapped his hands once. All right then, he said. Captain Gardner, tell your crew what to do. We split into 3 teams. Team 1, Iris and the teenagers, would head back into the vault and pick up a carefully chosen handful of extra packets. Not too many, enough to matter. Team 2, Javed, Sarah and the younger kids would stay in the service corridor, ready to move when I gave the word. Team 3, me and Callum, would go into the control hub under the dome. Why him? Leah demanded when I said it. Because if this goes sideways and I get shot, I said, you're going to want someone who knows how to swing that pipe of his between us and the security boys. Callum gave a lopsided grin. Good to know I'm valued, he said. You're heavy, I said. That's different. We moved. The inner hatch to the dome groaned as it opened. It hadn't been cycled with anyone but me in mind for years. A wall of warm, humid air hit us. Callum stopped dead, pipe dropping slightly. Bloody hell, he whispered. It's like stepping into a storybook. We stood at the end of aisle 1. Tomato vines, heavy with fruit, climbed trellises. Basil plants exhaled their spicy scent. Overhead, the filtered light was set to late afternoon, though it was barely midday outside. A little irrigation nozzle hissed, misting a row of lettuce. It's like, Callum began, and swallowed. I don't have words. It's like those old adverts, the ones with families, picnics, sprinklers. Don't break anything, I said gruffly, because if I didn't, I might cry. Wasn't planning on it, he said, stepping carefully between the rows. We walked briskly towards the centre of the dome. Control was housed in a low circular building under the main central air intake, a kind of hub where all the climate systems converged. Banks of screens, old physical switches, newer holographic interfaces. I'd insisted on redundancies. If I was going to be responsible for this Eden knockoff, I wanted more than just a touchscreen between me and disaster. The door recognised my handprint and slid open. "Stay close," I told Callum. "Don't touch anything." He looked around slowly. "How did they trust you with all this?" he asked. "They didn't," I said. "They trusted the contracts that say they own me." I moved to the central console. "Computer," I said, "authorize Level 3 environmental override, code HOLT Alpha 75. Authorization confirmed, the neutral voice replied. "Warning, manual adjustments may impact long-term stability of biosphere." "Yeah," I muttered. "That's sort of the point." I called up the dome's environmental profile. Humidity, 72%. Temperature, 24 degrees Celsius. CO2, 600 parts per million. Perfect. I nudged the temperature up, just a little at first, then more. Fans kicked in, dampers shifted, the dome started to sweat. "You cooking them?" Callum asked. "No," I said, "just giving them a fever." I dialed back the irrigation cycle, delaying the next watering run. On the monitors, some of the more delicate plants were already drooping, leaves curling at the edges. "It'll stress them," I said, "but they'll survive if I bring it back down soon. To a drone's sensors, though, it'll look like we've got a pathogen event, heat spike, moisture imbalance, a nightmare for any biosecurity officer. And that matters because," he prompted. "Because pathogens cost money," I said. "Containment, quarantine, replacement stock, testing. If they think this dome is a plague waiting to happen, they'll quarantine it and focus on their clean stacks on the coast." I killed the outer lights in one quadrant, plunging it into shadow. On the external cameras, it now looked like a patch of the dome had just died. The drone pinged the system. "Alert! External monitoring detects anomalous temperature and light patterns in primary dome," the polite computer voice announced. "Recommend diagnostics." "I'll give them diagnostics," I muttered. I opened a link to control. "Halt here," I said, putting breathless urgency into my voice. "We have a problem. Primary dome environmental controls are malfunctioning. I've got temperature spikes in sectors 3 through 7, irrigation failure in 2 and 9, and light drop-off in quadrant 4. It's cascading." A pause, then. "Define cascading." "Halt," the security man said. "Plants are wilting," I lied. "Humidity sensors are freaking out. The seeds are stable for now, but if this keeps up, we'll have rotten mold in 48 hours. If you send a team in, you'll be putting them at risk of exposure to whatever's causing this. Could be a pathogen. Could be a software attack. I don't know yet." I let a bit of genuine panic leak into my voice. It wasn't hard. "Understood," he said slowly. "Drone 19, confirm visual." The drone operator cut in. "We're seeing heavy condensation, unexplained shading in quadrant 4, and a temperature differential that suggests at least partial failure of your climate grid." Iris's plan, the controlled crash, was taking shape. "Halt," security said. "Your directive is to isolate the breach, lock down all non-essential systems. Do not allow any external contamination into the primary dome." "Already done," I said. "Dome is sealed. The only humans inside are me and authorized personnel. The refugees are contained outside the main biosphere in the service corridor. Security teams will still proceed," he said, "but our priority has shifted. The facility may require decommissioning pending full analysis. In that case, seed stock will be transferred to a secure off-site location." There it was. "Understood," I said softly. "How long until you arrive?" 3 hours remains, ETA, he said. "In the meantime, maintain your position and refrain from any further unsanctioned, emotional decisions." The line clicked. Callum let out a long, low whistle. "You're good," he said. "You should have been an actor." "I am an actor," I said. "I've been performing, calm, responsible scientist, in front of these people for years." I brought the temperature back down a little, enough to keep the plants from actually cooking, not enough to correct the anomalies. The dome looked sick now. It would recover, given time. The question was whether we would. Back in the service corridor, the others were ready. Iris and the teens had returned from the vault, pockets carefully bulged. Sarah had the kids in a rough line, each with a small bundle, food, water, seed packets. Nothing too obviously loot-like if we were scanned. Javid had my emergency med kit slung over one shoulder. I tried not to think too much about how vulnerable I was leaving the dome without him stocked. "Status?" I asked. "Smuggling complete," Iris said. "The library has been selectively edited." "Path?" Callum asked. "There's an old maintenance tunnel under the east fence," I said. "It was meant for cabling that never got installed. It leads down to the gully behind the hill. From there, you're on your own." Leah frowned. "What about you?" she asked. "I stay," I said. "Someone needs to hold this circus together long enough for you to get clear. If they arrive and find an empty dome and a bunch of suspicious footprints, they'll send drones after you. If they arrive and find a harried scientist having a meltdown over failing systems, they'll be too busy shouting at me to notice you've gone." Sarah stepped forward. "That's suicide," she said. "Probably not," I lied. "You're a crap liar," she said. I smiled despite myself. "Look," I said, "I've been living under their thumb for 12 years. I know how far I can push before they snap. If I make myself more trouble than I'm worth, they'll reassign me, not shoot me. They need people who can coax life out of dust, even now, especially now." "And if you misjudge?" Javid asked quietly. I shrugged. "Then you lot had better make the most of those seeds," I said, "because I'll be fertilizer." Tom lunged forward and hugged me hard. "Come with us," he mumbled into my suit. I froze. Nobody had hugged me in... I couldn't remember. "I can't," I said, awkwardly patting his back. "Someone has to stay with the greenhouse." He pulled back and wiped his nose. "You're going to keep growing things," he said. "I'm going to try," I said. He opened his hand. In it lay one of the sunflower seeds from his packet. "Take one," he said, "for here, so we match." My throat went tight. I took it. "That's not how genetics works," I said. "But, thanks." Iris squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "No," I said, "I'm doing something. We'll find out later what kind of thing it was." We moved quickly to the maintenance tunnel access, a small hatch at the base of the outer wall, half buried in accumulated dust. It opened with a creak and a puff of stale air, revealing a narrow sloping shaft. I went down first, testing each rung, then waved them through. One by one, they disappeared into the ground. Leah, Amma, the kids. Sarah last, looking back over her shoulder. "Thank you," she said, "for opening the door." "Thank you," I said, "for knocking politely." Callum lingered. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "No," I said. "Go anyway." He smirked. "You ever get tired of playing Atlas up there?" he said. "Look for a patch of sunflowers east of the old motorway. We'll keep a spot for you around the fire." "I'll bring tomatoes," I said. He disappeared into the tunnel. I closed the hatch and kicked dust over it until it looked like just another scar in the ground. Then I walked back into the dome and cranked the temperature another notch. The plants drooped. Sweat beaded on my forehead. I went to the central hub, took a deep breath, and opened the line to security again. "Halt here," I said, letting real exhaustion creep in. "Update. Environmental instability is worsening. I'm isolating sectors, but we may lose some experimental lines." The security man sounded irritated. "Do what you can," he said. "Our teams are en route. We have also flagged your facility for potential decommission." "Meaning what exactly?" I asked. "It means we'll likely extract the most valuable genetic stock and close down surface operations," he said. "Remote management, minimal staff. Your role will be reviewed." "Understood," I said, and killed the line before he could hear the shaky exhale. They were going to take my greenhouse away. Maybe that was fair. Maybe I'd never really owned it. I went and stood in the middle of the rows, letting the heat wrap around me, listening to the creak of stressed stems. "Sorry," I murmured. You'll be all right. You're tougher than you look. I thought of Iris and the others emerging from the tunnel into the gully, dust in their mouths, seed packets in their pockets. I pictured them walking east, searching for a hollow where the dust wasn't as deep, a fragment of old soil still holding memory, planting, waiting, watching. For a moment, I saw two futures laid over each other like transparency sheets. In one, Agridine stripped this place bare, moved the seeds to a stack on the coast, and left me in a smaller, more controlled version of the same cage. In the other, this dome, stressed, half-sabotaged, still alive, became a decoy. The real future would be scrappy little plots in forgotten corners, guarded by people nobody in a boardroom ever thought would matter. Both futures were fragile. Both could fail. I couldn't control that. All I could do was keep feeding the one that felt less like surrender. I reached into my pocket and took out the single sunflower seed Tom had given me. I walked to a small empty bed near the north wall, a spot I'd been saving for something special, though I hadn't known what. I pressed my thumb into the soil. It was rich, dark, smelled faintly of compost and hope. "All right, little one," I said. "Let's see what you can do." I dropped the seed in, covered it, and patted the earth gently. A ridiculous gesture in the grand scheme of things. One seed, one kid, one dome, one group of refugees walking into a poisoned world with pockets full of stolen futures. But every forest starts with something that small. The generators hummed. Outside, the dust kept on blowing. Inside, for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel completely alone. 3 hours later, the security convoy arrived. They sealed themselves into suits and stomped around the dome, complaining about the humidity. They took samples, they swabbed leaves, they muttered about anomalous readings and system instability. They took the main vault capsules, loading them into shock-proof cases under armed guard. They informed me I'd be temporarily reassigned pending investigation to a coastal stack. I nodded, signed the forms, and played the obedient scientist. They never asked about the maintenance tunnel. They never counted the packets. They never noticed the tiny, freshly disturbed patch of soil by the north wall. By the time they left, the dome's climate was slowly returning to normal. By the time they came back, weeks later, with new orders and new management structures, the little sprout by the wall had emerged, 2 leaves unfurling, stubborn and green. I was still here. So was it. So, I hoped, were they. Somewhere east of the old motorway, in a scrap of soil nobody had put a fence around yet, a kid named Tom would be looking at a stalk taller than him and thinking, "We did that." And maybe, just maybe, someone in a tower would glance at a satellite image of an unexpected patch of green in the middle of the dust and feel uneasy. Because control is a funny thing. You can fence in a greenhouse, you can sign contracts around a seed. You can tell a lonely gardener that her duty is to the future as long as she understands you own it. But life has never listened particularly well. It grows where it can. It slips under doors. It travels in pockets and stories and stubborn, desperate hands. And it only takes one person, one greenhouse, one handful of stolen seeds to remind the world that the future does not belong exclusively to those who can afford to patent it. Sometimes it belongs to the ones who were hungry enough to knock, and to the ones stupid enough to open the door.
Afterward, right, let's step out of the dome for a minute. Kettle on. Take a breath. Because Mara's story isn't just about a fancy greenhouse and some corporate villains in shiny suits. It's about something a lot closer to home. What do you do when you're the one holding the last good thing and everyone else is desperate? Couple of thoughts to tuck away for later. Call it your greenhouse prepper checklist if you like. 1. Seeds are just choices you haven't planted yet. In the story, those little packets are literal seeds. But in the real world, your seed stock is wider. Skills you haven't used yet. Tools you've thrown in a drawer for later. Relationships you haven't invested in. Ideas you keep meaning to start when things calm down. Mara hoarding seeds forever would be as pointless as you buying a shed full of kit and never learning how to use any of it. Stored potential is not the same as a future. It only becomes a future when you're willing to risk putting it in the ground. 2. Rationing isn't just about food, it's about compassion. Mara's stuck between two nasty extremes. Give everything away now. Everyone starves later. Lock the door forever. Nobody starves in her dome, but the world outside dies. Real life has softer edges, but the principle holds. You can't save everyone. You also can't hide behind that as an excuse to save no one. Whether it's time, money, skills, or actual beans and rice, the prepper trick is to give enough that people don't die in front of you without burning your own seed stock. Does it feel unfair? Yep. Welcome to adulthood. 3. Don't outsource your ethics to the people in charge. The suits in the story are very keen for Mara to obey the rules and let them decide who lives where. And honestly, that's comfortable. It's tempting to say, I'm just following policy. The system knows best. Except, systems are built by people, and sometimes those people are more interested in control than care. In a crisis, blackouts, shortages, pandemics, floods, you will hear a lot of, for the greater good, for stability, for order. Those can be code words for sit down and don't ask questions while we make decisions that won't affect us the way they affect you. Mara's big sin, in corporate terms, isn't that she messed with the thermostat. It's that she decided her ethics were not for sale. You're allowed to do that too. 4. Your greenhouse might be anything. Most of us don't have a literal dome full of tomatoes, but you probably have a last greenhouse of your own. A bit of knowledge your family relies on. A workshop, an allotment, a little business, a community group. A knack for calming people down, fixing things, or getting folks talking. In other words, a small pocket of order, comfort, or capability that will matter a lot more if the wider world starts wobbling. The question is what you're going to do with it when people knock. Bolt it, open it recklessly, or, like Mara, do something messy and risky that tries to honor both the future and the present. Spoiler, there's no clean option. 5. Plant something now while the lights are on. You don't need a climate apocalypse to make use of the story. You can learn how to grow 3 edible things in a pot. Not a YouTube binge, actually grow them. Teach a neighbor kid how to fix a bike, cook a meal, or start a fire safely. Share extra seeds, tools, or skills instead of hoarding every packet like a dragon. Decide, ahead of time, what your line is. If things go bad, this is how far I'll go to help. This is what I won't do, even if someone in a suit tells me to. Because when a desperate hand is on the glass, that is a hell of a time to start inventing your morality from scratch. So that's the last greenhouse in a nutshell. 1 woman, 1 dome, a pocket full of seeds, and a choice between perfect future and messy present. She goes messy. Not heroic, not clean, definitely not safe, but maybe, just maybe, that's how real futures are grown. Not in perfect domes, but in busted landscapes, by stubborn people who are hungry, tired, and still, somehow, willing to plant. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this audiobook. If you're able to leave a like, a share, and subscribe, leave a comment if you would like to add your thoughts. It helps us out.
All right, let's step out of the dome. That was The Last Greenhouse. Not a story about saving the world, just about not letting it rot quietly while everyone waits for permission to care. Mara doesn't fix everything. She doesn't beat the system. She doesn't even know if what she did was right. She just refuses to pretend that the future matters more than the people standing in front of her. And that's the uncomfortable bit, isn't it? Because most of us won't be asked to save civilization. but we might be asked to share food, or knowledge, or space. And when that moment comes, there won't be a rulebook that fits neatly. So if this story sticks with you, good, that means it's doing its job. I'll leave you with this thought: hoarding seeds doesn't grow a future. Planting them does. This has been a Proper Prepper FM production. Stay curious, stay human, and if someone knocks, decide now what kind of person opens the door. And don't forget to drop a like, a share and subscribe. See you all laters.